Egypt, because we cannot forget history and what Egypt did for all Africa and for all the African countries and for all the liberation movements and for all the liberation leaders in the 60s, when Egypt hosted most of these movements and the leaders who became presidents of their independent countries afterwards. So that role, that was Egypt's role in Africa, and therefore when you look at the map, Egypt has embassies all over the African continent. But unfortunately, it was Egypt, by its own doing, who pulled away, and that caused this gap that was filled up by others, unfortunately.
Yeah. What now Egypt must do in order to regain its power and influence in Africa once again? Is it investment? Is it project?
What Egypt must do is what President Sisi has started doing by reaching out to Africa again, by attending the African summits, by meeting with African leaders, and of course, investments is on the top of the list. I would invite the Egyptian business community to look at seriously at Africa, and investment there, I believe, it will be worth their while. I mean, payback will be very, very enticing.
Okay, sir, you've known about the Ethiopia's Renaissance Dam and the timing of building such a dam. Why they chose this timing in particular to go on with this project despite Egypt's disagreement about continuing such a project?
Well, as I said before, Egypt has no problem with any African country developing. But on the contrary, Egypt will contribute, if it can, with its expertise in helping this or that country in development. And on top of the list will be Ethiopia. But this should not be on the expense of Egypt. This is because Egypt has every right when it comes to the Nile and the water of the Nile. We have every right because this Nile is an international waterway. Therefore, after the 2011 revolution and what came out of it and the vacuum that was there was exploited.
Did they view Egypt as a weak country at this moment?
Well, I wouldn't say they viewed Egypt as a weak country, but they viewed Egypt as a country with many problems, and it has...
To be busy with its problems right now.
That's it. And therefore, their plans were there already on the table. So they declared that they would start building this dam. For a very long time, there was again no real communication between the two governments until President Sisi started engaging with the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, and I believe that this reflected in a very positive manner, even though, despite the fact that there are no results so far.
Yeah.
But I believe this engagement in itself will lead us in the end to something that will not hurt Egypt as a country when it comes to its water supplies.
But Egypt, until this moment, opposed the building of such a project, and Ethiopia is on its way moving ahead with finishing such a dam. What if the dam is completed at the timing that Ethiopia said it's going to be after 2 years, I believe? What if the dam is finished? Egypt will be totally affected when it comes to water?
No, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't really say that. The two governments now are engaged in this tripartite commission with Sudan, and they are looking into this through a consultancy firm that they will hire by the approval of the three countries in order to make some studies and to come to a conclusion on whether the building of the dam in its as such would have any negative effects on Egypt.
And if it had negative effects on Egypt, what's going to happen?
There's, I believe, a time frame or a time limit for this consultancy firm to come to this conclusion within 6 months.
Do you believe that Ethiopia here is buying time?
Yes, I do believe so. And therefore, we in Egypt should be really engaged in a way that we have to, agree quickly on this issue of the firm, the consultancy firm, in order for it to start doing its work and to come out with this conclusion. But I don't believe that this dam will be finished in 2 years. I think it needs more time than that.
Okay, moving to the crisis in South Sudan, and of course we have Sudan itself with al-Bashir and its troubles. Do you believe that Sudan has been split into two countries? Are we, on the long run, witness South Sudan being splitting also in another two countries?
No, no. There's a lot of problems within South Sudan because, it consists of a number of tribes. That is the composition of the country. So each tribe wants a piece of power, a piece of the cake, if I may use this term, when it comes to power in South Sudan. That's why we've seen recently the power sharing, that agreement that took place between Salva Kiir and Tareq Machar, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's very delicate, the situation there. I mean, John Garang, who died in this helicopter accident, was a strong leader, and he was actually a unifier. He was against separation. He just wanted more, rights for the South, because the South was ignored for such a long time. Very underdeveloped. People there were not getting any rights whatsoever. So this movement of Garang was mainly for that, to get more rights for his people.
But he didn't want to split
No,
Sudan.
he was actually against separation. He was actually against separation. And there are those who say that that could have been the cause of
his death.
Yes.
And don't you believe that what's happening today with Riek Machar and Salva Kiir isn't the same scenario that happened before? We found power struggle, we found each one wants a piece of the cake?
Well, at the time of John Garang, there was no real power struggle. I mean,
al-Bashir wants the whole power. He doesn't want a sharing power.
Well, but in the end, unfortunately, he had to give up. I mean, he paid a very heavy price by losing South Sudan.
Yeah.
So I think that the government of Sudan now is really looking carefully, because let's not forget we have Darfur and the problems there.
Juba.
And in the east, there are problems too. So if they don't be careful,
But what are the people in the middle? Here there's power struggle, they are fighting to take power. What are the people in the middle? Why the leaders are not looking to the people and
the people of the country, you
yeah,
mean?
of course.
Well, this is it. That's usually who pays the price of all of this. The suffering is always the people who are, suffering, but the leaders are, it's not on
in
their
another
mind.
place.
It's not on their mind, unfortunately. Yeah.
Well, Ambassador Tareq Ghoneim, former ambassador to Ethiopia, thank you for joining us and welcome once again to Africa Today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Well, this brings us to the end of our show. I'm Dina Mamdouh. Please stay tuned.